Thomas Ross screamed in agony as Commander Keed jammed the neural probe deeper into his skull, the vicious Vidian determined to rip the location of Earth from the human's mind. But Keed underestimated human resilience. He didn't know the defiant fire that burned in this young explorer's heart. And he certainly didn't anticipate that trying to break Thomas would be the greatest regret of his wretched alien life. The Vidians were the scourge of the galaxy, a cruel spacefaring race that built their empire on the backs of slaves. Their conquest seemed unstoppable as they swept across the stars, crushing planet after planet beneath their heel. Entire civilizations vanished, with the survivors dragged off in chains to toil endlessly under the pitiless gaze of their new alien masters. So, when they captured Thomas Ross on the fringes of known space, the Vidians rejoiced. Here was a golden opportunity, a human far from home, to torture until he revealed the secrets of his species. Commander Keed took sadistic pleasure as he worked to break his new prize. When physical pain failed, he subjected Thomas to sights no mind should have to endure, visions of his fellow humans suffering in Vidian labs, dissected and experimented on like lab rats. But through it all, through every fresh hell the Vidians inflicted, Thomas held firm. He would not, could not, betray his people. And with each refusal, Keed's fury grew. This human stubbornness was intolerable. These primates needed to learn their place. Earth would pay for Thomas's insolence. Humanity would be ground to dust. As the armada gathered, as 1,000 Vidian ships prepared to descend on Earth like a plague of locusts, Thomas languished in the bowels of Keed's flagship, his body broken, his spirit battered. But not beaten. Never beaten. In that dark cell, he found an unlikely ally, a fellow prisoner named Hawkins, a hardened soldier with a lifetime of experience fighting the Vidian menace. The two humans knew they had to escape, had to warn Earth of the coming storm. The fate of their entire species hung in the balance. If the Vidians made it to human space unopposed, it would mean the end, a future of unending servitude. So Thomas and Hawkins hatched a desperate plan, jury-rigging a makeshift data siphon to infiltrate the ship's network, secretly bleeding critical vulnerabilities into the Vidian fleet. The stolen data guided their harrowing flight through the bowels of the alien Leviathan to a waiting escape shuttle. And then they were away, blasting through the void on a desperate race back to Earth, Vidian guns dogging their every parsec. Battered and bloodied, the unlikely heroes reached human space against all odds, sounding the alarm, bringing dire news to a shocked world. Vicious alien predators were coming, hell-bent on conquest. Only the strength of human defiance stood against the looming specter of extinction. Now, as Thomas and Hawkins take their place alongside their brothers and sisters in arms, as the united fleets of Earth prepare for battle, only one question remains. Will human tenacity triumph, or will our species be consigned to an eternity of grim bondage among the stars? The Vidians gambled everything on the frailty of the human spirit, and now they will learn the true cost of their arrogance. As the battle raged in the skies above Earth, Thomas and Hawkins prepared to strike at the heart of the Vidian war machine. They knew this was their chance to turn the tide, to give humanity a fighting chance against the alien onslaught. Disguised in captured Vidian armor, the two infiltrators led their strike team aboard a commandeered enemy shuttle. The sleek craft slipped through the chaotic fray of ships, unnoticed amidst the laser blasts and missile trails. Thomas gripped his pulse rifle tight as they approached Keed's flagship, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the moment of truth. The shuttle shuddered as it sliced through the docking shields, slamming into the hangar with a bone-jarring crunch. Before the echoes faded, Thomas was moving, his team fanning out behind him in a well-practiced maneuver. Vidian soldiers swarmed to meet them, energy beams sizzling through the air. Thomas ducked and weaved, his rifle barking in controlled bursts. Beside him, Hawkins fought with the cold efficiency of a born warrior, each shot finding its mark. Together they carved a path deeper into the ship, the deck plates slick with the blood of fallen foes. At last they reached the bridge, the doors exploding inward under a barrage of breaching charges. Through the smoke and flame, Thomas saw him. Keed, the sadistic architect of Earth's suffering. The Vidian commander snarled in rage, drawing a wicked-looking blade from his belt. Thomas charged, all the pain and humiliation he'd endured fueling his attack. They clashed in a whirlwind of strikes, human fury pitted against alien strength. Thomas fought with desperate abandon, landing blows that would have felled a lesser opponent. But Keed absorbed the hits with a mocking laugh, his superior biology granting him a grim endurance. Hawkins, meanwhile, hunched over the ship's control console, fingers flying over the unfamiliar interface. Precious seconds ticked by as he fought to override the Vidian systems, the tide of battle surging around him. Thomas gasped as Keed's blade found its mark, searing pain lancing through his side. He stumbled back, alien blood dripping from a dozen wounds. Keed advanced with a triumphant roar, moving in for the kill. In that moment, Thomas saw the chink in the alien's defenses. With a wordless cry, he lunged, driving his rifle butt into Keed's throat with every ounce of strength he possessed. The Vidian reeled, choking, and Thomas pressed his advantage. Blow after blow rained down on the staggered commander until, with a sickening crunch, he crumpled to the deck and lay still. A klaxon blared, warning lights flashing red. Keed's dying act had been to activate the ship's self-destruct. Thomas raced to Hawkins's side, a new urgency to their mission. Together they worked feverishly, bypassing fail-safes and rewriting code. With mere seconds to spare, they succeeded. The wailing alarms fell silent as the self-destruct shut down. Explosions blossomed across the flagship's hull as the human fleet, seeing their opening, focused their attack. The once mighty vessel shuddered under the onslaught, hurtling toward oblivion. Thomas and his team scrambled back to their waiting shuttle, dodging debris and shockwaves. They blasted free of the dying ship just as it erupted in a blinding conflagration, the explosion propelling them tumbling into open space. Cheers erupted across the human comms as the Vidian flagship vanished in a roiling ball of flame. The invading fleet faltered, thrown into disarray by the loss of their commander. Earth's defenders rallied, seizing the momentum, hammering the Vidians with renewed ferocity. But the euphoria was short-lived. The invaders, though shaken, refused to buckle. With cold, machine-like efficiency, they regrouped, unleashing a devastating counterattack. The human lines buckled under a storm of laser fire and torpedo strikes. In the chaos of battle, Thomas and Hawkins found each other once again. Grim understanding passed between them as they surveyed the carnage, the relentless Vidian advance. Even with Cade gone, Earth teetered on the brink of defeat. The alien war machine was simply too vast, too implacable. Only one desperate hope remained, to strike at its heart. Thomas signaled the UEDF command, outlining their audacious plan. To the defenders' credit, there was no hesitation, no debate. The order went out, and a small, hand-picked team assembled. The best soldiers, pilots, and infiltrators Earth had to offer. Thomas and Hawkins would lead them, guiding them through Vidian space to the enemy homeworld itself. It was a mission from which many would not return, but it was the only chance for humanity's survival. As the task force made its final preparations, the battle raged on around them. Every human ship and soldier fought with the desperate fury of the doomed, knowing their sacrifice was all that stood between Earth and extinction. They would hold the line, buy every precious second for the infiltrators, though it cost them everything. Thomas and his team boarded their sleek stealth shuttle, the most advanced craft human science could produce. As they rocketed away from the embattled blue globe of Earth, he caught one final glimpse of the world he loved, now engulfed in the titanic struggle for its future. There could be no failsafe, no room for error. The fate of humanity rode with them into the starlit void. The stealth shuttle cut through the inky void of Vidian space, its engines running silent. Thomas gripped the controls, his knuckles tightening with tension. Beside him, Hawkins studied sensor readings, searching for any sign of enemy patrols. "Asteroid field dead ahead," Hawkins muttered. "Perfect cover." Thomas nodded grimly, guiding their craft into the swirling chaos of rock and ice. Chunks of debris scraped against the hull as they wove through the treacherous maze. A mammoth boulder loomed suddenly in their path. Thomas banked hard, feeling the G-forces crush him into his seat. They cleared it by mere inches. Days blurred together as they pressed deeper into enemy territory. Sleep came in fitful bursts, punctuated by nerve-wracking close calls with Vidian ships. They skirted the edge of an unstable wormhole, its swirling maw threatening to swallow them whole. The shuttle groaned under the strain as reality itself warped around them. At last, they reached their target, a remote Vidian colony on the fringes of the Empire. Under cover of darkness, Thomas led the infiltration team to the research station's perimeter. They sliced through the fence, disabled alarm systems, and slipped inside. The corridors echoed with the sounds of approaching guards. Thomas signaled his team to take cover. As the Vidians rounded the corner, human pulse rifles erupted in a staccato rhythm. The aliens fell before they could raise the alarm. "This way," Hawkins hissed, consulting a stolen schematic. They raced through winding passageways until they reached the main data hub. While Hawkins's tech experts worked to breach the Vidian firewalls, Thomas kept watch. A siren wailed. They'd been detected. "How much longer?" Thomas shouted over the din. "Almost there," Hawkins called back. The door at the far end of the chamber exploded inward. Vidian soldiers poured through the opening, energy weapons blazing. Thomas dove for cover, returning fire. The air filled with ozone and the screams of the wounded. "Got it!" Hawkins yelled triumphantly. "Fall back!" They retreated under heavy fire, dragging a captured Vidian scientist with them. Outside, their waiting shuttle roared to life. They piled in as laser blasts peppered the hull. Then they were airborne, rocketing away from the colony. In the cargo hold, Hawkins loomed over their prisoner. "Talk," he growled. The Vidian's eyes darted nervously. "I know nothing." Thomas stepped forward, his face hard. "We have your data. We know about the weapon. Tell us everything." Under relentless questioning, the alien broke. He babbled about a planet killer, a doomsday device of unimaginable power. The color drained from Thomas's face as he realized the stakes. If the Vidians completed this monstrosity, Earth was doomed. They plotted a course for the shipyard where the superweapon was under construction. As they approached, Thomas addressed the strike team. "This is it," he said grimly. "We take out that weapon or humanity falls. Failure is not an option." The ensuing battle was chaos incarnate. Human fighters swarmed the Vidian defenders while Thomas led the boarding party onto the half-built superweapon. They fought their way through twisting corridors, planting explosives at key junctures. Suddenly, an energy field sprang to life around the charges. Their detonators were useless. "We're cut off," Hawkins shouted. "No way back to the shuttle." Thomas looked at the inactive explosives, then back at his team. He made his choice. "Get them out of here," he told Hawkins. "I'll overload these manually." Hawkins started to protest, but Thomas silenced him with a look. "Go, that's an order." As his comrades retreated, Thomas set to work. He could hear Vidian reinforcements approaching. His fingers flew over the detonator controls, bypassing failsafe after failsafe. A blinding flash, searing heat, then darkness. Hawkins watched from the fleeing shuttle as the superweapon erupted in a massive fireball. Thomas was gone, but his sacrifice had saved them all. Word of the destruction spread like wildfire through the human fleet. With renewed vigor, they pressed the attack. Hawkins led the charge, cutting through the Vidian line smoothly. One by one, the alien ships fell or fled before the human onslaught. As the last Vidian cruiser vanished into hyperspace, Hawkins allowed himself a grim smile. They'd won the day, but the war was not nearly finished. He swore a solemn oath that one day, the Vidians would pay for every human life they'd taken. Years passed, but the scars of war never faded. Hawkins stood on the bridge of the UEDF flagship, the Vengeance, as it led a vast armada toward Vidian Prime. The fleet stretched as far as the eye could see. Human warships alongside vessels from a dozen alien races, all united against their common oppressor. "Status report," Hawkins barked. "Vidian defense grid detected, sir," his tactical officer responded. "They've got every ship they can muster guarding the approaches." Hawkins nodded grimly. "Deploy the fleet. Hammer those blockades until they crack." Space erupted in a firestorm as the two forces collided. Laser batteries flashed, missiles streaked across the void, and ships exploded in silent balls of flame. The UEDF pressed forward relentlessly, their superior numbers and allies' support grinding down the Vidian defenses. "We've breached their outer perimeter," someone shouted. "Now's our chance," Hawkins growled. "Prep the assault shuttles." He led a team of hardened commandos, veterans of 100 battles. Their craft bucked and weaved through the chaos, dodging debris and energy blasts. With a bone-jarring thud, they slammed onto a landing platform of the Imperial Palace. The team poured out, weapons blazing. Vidian guards fell before their onslaught, but more poured in to replace them. Hawkins fired his pulse rifle in controlled bursts, each shot finding its mark. "Push forward," he roared over the din of battle. "We end this today." They fought their way through twisting corridors, leaving a trail of alien corpses in their wake. At last, they reached the massive doors of the throne room. Hawkins planted breaching charges and dove for cover. The explosion rocked the palace. As the smoke cleared, Hawkins saw him, Archon Croden, the Vidian Emperor himself. The alien ruler snarled, brandishing a crackling energy weapon. "You dare invade my sanctum?" Croden boomed. "I'll mount your head on my wall, human." Hawkins dodged as a bolt of energy sizzled past. He rolled, came up firing, but Croden's personal shields deflected the shots. The Vidian was faster, stronger, but Hawkins had survived worse odds. He feinted left, then lunged right, tackling Croden around the waist. They grappled furiously, crashing into ornate furnishings. Hawkins landed a solid blow, but Croden's alien physiology shrugged it off. A backhand sent Hawkins flying. Dazed, he scrambled for cover as Croden advanced. Think, damn it. Then he saw it, a ceremonial banner hanging nearby. In one fluid motion, Hawkins yanked it down, entangling the Vidian's legs. As Croden stumbled, Hawkins pounced. They traded blows in a desperate frenzy. Hawkins felt ribs crack under Croden's assault, but he gave as good as he got. With a final surge of strength, he slammed the alien's head into the floor. Croden went limp. Panting, Hawkins stood over his fallen foe. He tapped his comm. "Palace secure. We've got the bastard." Outside, the Vidian fleet fell into chaos as news of their leader's capture spread. UEDF forces swarmed through the breaches, seizing control of key facilities. The war that had raged for years was finally, decisively won. Hawkins dragged Croden to his feet, shoving him toward the throne room's communications array. "Start talking," he growled. "Tell your people it's over, and don't leave out a single one of your crimes." Defeated, the once mighty Emperor complied. His confession echoed across every frequency, detailing atrocities that turned stomachs and ignited fury. Across the galaxy, oppressed worlds rose up against their Vidian overlords. In the following days, what remained of the Vidian leadership sued for peace. Hawkins personally oversaw their unconditional surrender, ending the existential threat to humanity and its allies. UEDF peacekeepers fanned out across Vidian space, disarming military installations and shutting down bioweapon research facilities. Transitional governments were established on subjugated worlds, paving the way for true independence. On Earth, crowds filled the streets in raucous celebration. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged victorious. But for Hawkins, the victory felt hollow. He thought of Thomas, of all those who had sacrificed everything to reach this moment. In a solemn ceremony, Archon Croden and his top officials were put on trial for their countless crimes. Hawkins testified, ensuring the full scope of Vidian barbarity was laid bare for the galaxy to see. Justice, long delayed, was finally served. The Vidian species, once the scourge of the galaxy, now faced a reckoning. Under close human supervision, they began the long process of rebuilding their society, stripped of the cruelty that had defined them for so long. Hawkins returned to a hero's welcome on Earth. Medals were pinned to his chest, statues erected in his likeness. But he found no joy in the adulation. He had seen too much, lost too many friends. Instead, he threw himself into ensuring humanity learned the right lessons from the conflict. "We must remain vigilant," he told anyone who would listen. "And we must never become what we fought against." As monuments rose celebrating the human triumph, Hawkins couldn't shake the feeling that the real work was just beginning. The galaxy had changed forever, and humanity's place in it would never be the same. The dust settled on the Vidian surrender, but peace remained elusive. Hawkins stood atop a crumbling fortress on Vidian Prime, overseeing the dismantling of particle cannons and antimatter reactors. His face was etched with lines of exhaustion and stress. "Sir, we've detected another insurgent cell in the Caraxis sector," a young lieutenant reported, handing over a datapad. Hawkins scanned the information, his jaw clenching. "Dispatch the 3rd Fleet. I want that nest of Vipers wiped out." As weeks turned to months, Hawkins crisscrossed former Vidian space, crushing pockets of resistance. The work was grueling, but necessary. He wouldn't let the hard-won victory slip away. On the harsh industrial world of Tauros IV, Hawkins led a convoy of armored vehicles through smoke-choked streets. Factories belched acrid fumes into the air as human troops secured strategic locations. A deafening explosion ripped through the air. Hawkins's vehicle flipped, metal screaming as it skidded across broken pavement. He clawed his way out of the wreckage, ears ringing. Through the haze, he saw Vidian insurgents swarming from nearby buildings. Hawkins reached for his sidearm, but a second blast knocked him off his feet. Searing pain tore through his body as shrapnel peppered his torso. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't respond. As darkness closed in, Hawkins saw his security team cut down in a hail of plasma fire. He awoke to the sterile white of a medical bay, the hum of life support equipment filling his ears. A doctor with weary eyes stood over him. "Admiral Hawkins, you're on Earth. We've stabilized you, but the damage is extensive." Hawkins tried to speak, but no words came. He glanced down at his body, horror dawning as he saw the mass of tubes and wires protruding from his chest. "There's only one option left," the doctor continued. "An experimental procedure using Vidian biotech. It's risky, but it's your only chance." Hawkins wanted to refuse, to die human rather than be tainted by his enemies. But the fire that had driven him for so long wouldn't let him give up. He managed a weak nod. The next days were a blur of surgeries and agonizing pain. When Hawkins finally regained full consciousness, he felt wrong. He raised a hand, seeing gleaming metal where flesh should be. Panic rose in his throat. "What have you done to me?" he rasped. A mirror revealed the full extent of his transformation. Cybernetic implants meshed with patches of modeled Vidian flesh. His left eye glowed with an eerie blue light. As the initial shock faded, darker impulses began to stir within Hawkins. He felt stronger, faster, but also filled with a seething rage he couldn't control. In his mind's eye, he saw visions of conquest and subjugation. "No," he growled, clutching his head. "I won't become like them." But the hunger for power grew, warring with his human conscience. As Hawkins struggled with his new reality, reports flooded in of escalating Vidian attacks. The UEDF needed him back in action. Despite protests from doctors and officials, Hawkins demanded to be sent to the front lines. His augmented body proved devastatingly effective in combat. He tore through Vidian strongholds with inhuman strength and speed. After one particularly brutal assault, Hawkins stood amid the carnage, his hands slick with alien blood. A young soldier approached, eyes wide with fear. "Sir, are you all right?" Hawkins turned, seeing his reflection in the soldier's visor. For a moment, he didn't recognize the creature staring back at him. He opened his mouth to respond, but only a feral snarl escaped his lips.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.